All right, you ready?
Do it.
Okay, face still. Do you know where Shanann is now?
No.
Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance?
No.
In a world where family is meant to offer love and support, it's unimaginable that anyone would commit such heinous acts against their own. Yet, these evil killers show that darkness has no limits. One shocking case is that of Cynthia Varela. What she did will make you question the true meaning of family. Let's take a look at convicts who murdered their own.
She was such a good person and such a good wife to him.
He is amazing. I can't tell you how wonderful he is.
How could he have done something like that to her?
The Watts family, consisting of Chris and Shannon Watts and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste, commonly known as Cece, captivated social media with their seemingly perfect lives. Their picture-perfect portrayal of a happily married couple presented an idealized reality. However, behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding that would shock the world.
Oh, look at this.
She just was a ball of love. I don't know. It sounds like too good to be true, but
I know, but it really was.
She really, yeah.
In 2018, Shannon had exciting news to share with her husband. She informed him she was pregnant with their third child, a boy. To support his family, Chris had a successful career at Anadarko Petroleum, working as a petroleum engineer. On the other hand, Shannon took on the role of a stay-at-home mother, managing the family and caring for their two young daughters. However, she had also become involved in the MLM industry, selling a product called Thrive for a company called Lavelle.
That is what a really good friend does. A really good friend knows something's wrong and does that.
She got there and there was no answer, so I texted Chris.
On August 13, 2018, the world was shaken by the tragic disappearance of Shannon Watts and her daughters Bella and Cece. In the hours following Shannon's disappearance, Chris acted unemotionally, not worried, and lackadaisical. He seemed unaffected by the situation, leading many to believe he had something to hide. This lack of concern and urgency raised suspicions and fueled speculation among investigators and family members.
This is him at 517.
We can see the garage door open. There's some kind of movement that can be seen.
Clearly parked out there on the side, like get everything but in.
However, things started to change when Chris's neighbor approached the police with security camera footage, showing Chris leaving and re-entering his house and car several times the night before. The footage raised suspicions as it seemed to contradict Chris's claims that he had spent the entire evening at work.
Watching his reaction when everybody is watching this and then turn and look at him, his demeanor changes almost immediately.
Upon viewing the security camera footage, Chris became visibly nervous. The calm and unbothered demeanor he had maintained up until that point vanished. Instead, he displayed signs of nervousness, fidgeting, and stammering while answering questions from the police.
Police looking for a pregnant Frederick woman and her two children who have seemingly vanished without a trace.
Denver 7's Thomas Hoppe spoke with the woman's husband.
Did you guys get into an argument before she left?
When the detectives investigating Shannon, Bella, and Cece's disappearance questioned Chris Watts, he said he was unaware of their whereabouts. In a heartfelt plea to the media outlets, Chris begged for Shannon and the girls to come home. However, 2 days after their families were reported missing, Chris failed a polygraph examination regarding his wife and daughter's disappearance.
To make them vanish.
You have not shed one tear in 2 days that you've been here.
No.
Not one.
After speaking with his father, Chris confessed to the detectives that his wife, Shannon, had killed their daughters in a fit of rage. According to Chris, he had killed Shannon in a fit of anger because he was so upset. However, it later came to light that Chris actually murdered Shannon in cold blood before smothering his two daughters, Bella and Cece. Chris then proceeded to dispose of all three bodies by driving them to his worksite and leaving them in crude oil vats. This act not only demonstrated a disregard for human life, but also revealed a chilling level of planning and premeditation.
From father and husband to triple murder suspect, arrested overnight, Chris Watts is accused of killing his pregnant wife Shanann and their two daughters.
On August 21, 2018, Chris Watts was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and a slew of other charges. 3 months later, on November 6th, Chris pleaded guilty to the charges against him. He was sentenced to 5 life sentences without parole and an additional 48 years because Shannon was pregnant at the time of her death. Furthermore, Chris received 36 years for tampering with deceased bodies.
The defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner.
Disgustingly, while incarcerated, Chris has gathered a following of lonely women who have written to him, expressing admiration despite his heinous crimes. Chris even has the audacity to make allegations from behind bars, blaming Shannon for everything that occurred and labeling her as a control freak. Unlike Chris Watts, who committed a heinous crime by murdering his family in cold blood, Colby Allen Parker committed an even more disturbing act when he killed and mutilated his grandfather in a horrific incident.
A Florida man is charged with killing his 77-year-old grandfather, Ronald Wells Sr., and cutting off the man's ears. According to the police report, while he was being questioned.
In 2021, the small town of DeLand, Florida was gripped by a shocking case of violence and murder. The local authorities were called to a residence on reports of a stabbing. When police officers arrived on the scene, they were met with a gruesome sight. Colby Allen Parker, a young man covered in blood, was frantically trying to explain what had happened. Nearby lay the body of an older man with multiple stab wounds evident on his body.
About the death, Colby Parker pulled the human ears from his pocket. CBS affiliate WPEC reports the Lake County Sheriff's Office responded to a home in Central Florida.
Colby informed the officers that the person lying nearby was his grandfather. As the officers examined the grandfather's body, they noticed stab wounds all over it. This disturbing discovery raised even more questions. While officers were examining the grandfather, another officer approached Colby for questioning. According to Colby, his grandfather had attempted to hurt him, but he managed to wrestle away the knife and fatally stab his grandfather in the heart.
Saturday night for reports of a man being attacked by his grandfather. According to deputies, Parker claims Wells pulled a knife on him.
The most shocking revelation of the case came when Colby pulled a pair of severed human ears from his pockets. These ears, it later turned out, belonged to his grandfather. Colby had gruesomely cut off the ears of his deceased grandfather after killing him.
To get the knife away, then used it against Wells in what he called self-defense. Investigators say Parker admitted to cutting his grandfather multiple times.
During the investigation, Colby tried to steal a gun from an officer. Additionally, he also attempted to grab a taser, further illustrating his violent behavior. The altercation escalated, and the officers found themselves in a life-or-death struggle. Despite the deployment of a taser, Colby's aggression remained determined.
The butcher's knife also hitting him multiple times with a baseball bat, and they say he also admitted to cutting Wells' ears off and stated he wanted his grandfather to be with his dead grandmother.
As the investigation unfolded, investigators uncovered a disturbing scene within Colby's home. In the main bedroom, they discovered an apron with the words "The Family Butcher" emblazoned on it. Attached to the apron were 2 fake plastic human ears, an eerie discovery. Moving deeper into Colby's living space, investigators stumbled upon a chilling sight. A bloody baseball bat and butcher's knife lay nearby, with blood dripping from the blade. The sight sent shivers down their spines.
Junior?
Yeah. Where's Junior?
Ronnie Jr. right here.
Ronnie? Okay, what is that?
Those are ears.
Based on the evidence gathered, Colby was charged with second-degree murder and assaulting an officer. His bail was denied, ensuring he remained behind bars until his trial. During interviews with investigators, Colby shockingly confessed the truth behind his crimes. He claimed that his grandfather's death was not a random act of violence, but rather a calculated act. Colby's motive was to reunite his grandfather with his deceased grandmother, which he felt was the only way to achieve closure. Colby Allen Parker's chilling crime was a devastating act of violence, but the next case is just as unsettling. Joshua Amberge, a man whose brutal actions were driven by rage, leaving a victim's life shattered.
Skyview 12 shows us the home where Melissa Amberge was stabbed. Now we'll pan over to the house where a neighbor says he spotted that suspect, Joshua Amberge, on his back patio.
A 39-year-old man named Joshua Amberge was arrested in Claremont County, Ohio in November 2022 after allegedly stabbing his mother, 58-year-old Melissa Amberge, several times. The tragic incident unfolded at the Amberge home in Miami Township, where police found Melissa in the basement. Due to the severity of the injuries she sustained, authorities were forced to airlift her by helicopter to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. However, despite the best efforts of medical professionals, Melissa was pronounced dead upon arriving at the hospital.
That suspect, Joshua Amberge, on his back patio. That's where we pick up from a body camera on a Miami Township police officer.
Police, let me see your hands. Drop the knife.
At the time of the incident, Joshua was under court-imposed community control, a type of probation alternative to incarceration for a previous offense. Under community control, the defendant is given a set of conditions to avoid imprisonment. However, it appears that Joshua's compliance was lacking, as he violently attacked his own mother.
Officers shouted at Amberge to drop the knife several more times while holding him at gunpoint. The officer whose body camera we're watching decides to holster his handgun, pulls out his taser.
You got lethal, I got taser.
When police arrived at the Amberge home, Joshua had fled the scene, leaving behind the knife he had used to stab her. Officers immediately launched a search for Joshua in the surrounding area. After an extensive search, they eventually found him on the back patio of a nearby home.
You got lethal, I got taser.
As we zoom in, we can see Amberge's not listening and holds the knife up in a threatening manner.
Hell's coming at me.
The second officer fires 2 shots.
When officers arrived on the scene, they were greeted by 20-year-old Joshua, who was wielding a knife and refusing to comply with their commands. Despite the officers' repeated commands to drop the knife, Joshua continued to whirl the weapon, posing a significant threat to the safety of both himself and the responding officers. Recognizing the heightened nature of the situation, one police officer made the decision to deploy non-lethal force by using a taser. However, the taser missed Joshua, leaving him still armed with the knife.
2 shots, one of which hits Amberge in the leg. As he goes down, you can see the knife tumbling away from him in this freeze frame.
Lay down! Lay down! Lay down!
With the situation continuing to escalate, a second police officer felt obligated to take action. In self-defense and to prevent further harm, they fired at Joshua, striking his leg. Joshua was tackled to the ground, immobilized by the gunshot wound. Once Joshua was subdued and on the ground, officers approached and administered immediate medical attention. They applied a tourniquet to his leg to staunch the bleeding and stabilize his condition. With Joshua's life hanging in the balance, officers called for a helicopter to transport him to a nearby hospital for medical treatment.
I talked with Chief Mills about how his officers responded.
When dealing with knives and pipes and things like that we are going to make an attempt to de-escalate.
Joshua was taken to the hospital where he received treatment for his injury. After his release, he was placed in police custody and charged with several offenses related to the confrontation with police. The chief of the Miami Township Police Department addressed the media, calling the outcome of Joshua's arrest unfortunate. However, he emphasized that his officers were forced into the situation and were forced to make split-second decisions.
Gap that we have, the safety gap, we have no other option than to use the force available to us at that time.
The police chief added that one of the officers who responded to the call had contemplated leaving the department due to the psychological trauma they experienced during the encounter. In October of 2023, nearly a year after his arrest, Joshua pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and 1 count of felonious assault on a police officer in a plea deal.
Were the best years of my life I had with Melissa.
During those 42 years, Ted and Melissa Amberge built a beautiful life. 4 kids, 7 grandkids, and a lifetime to spend together.
During the sentencing hearing, Joshua's siblings pleaded with the judge to give their now 40-year-old brother a lengthy prison sentence because of the psychological hurt they have gone through. Jacob, Joshua's brother, told Judge Haddad that he would feel relieved when this was all over and that he hoped to get justice for their mother.
He picked up that knife. Today is the last day you will ever hear my voice, see my face, and look me in the eye.
Powerful words from family members who vowed to cut ties with Joshua.
Judge Haddad listened intently to the heartfelt pleas of Joshua's siblings and considered the profound impact of his actions on their family. He ultimately made the decision to sentence Joshua to 30 years for his mother's murder and 11 years for the assault on the police during his arrest. Furthermore, Judge Haddad ordered that the sentence for the murder of Joshua's mother be served consecutively rather than concurrently. According to Judge Haddad, this decision was made to protect the public and prevent any further harm. While Joshua Amberge's act of taking his own mother's life is horrible, it pales in comparison to the unimaginable horror of Cynthia Valera's heinous crime.
Police say it was one of the worst child abuse cases they've ever seen. According to investigators, Verela Casaus abused her son Anamarie and beat him to death 3 years ago.
In 2013, a 9-year-old boy named Anamarie Varela Casaus lost his young life at the hands of his own mother. Amarie's younger sister, who was only 5 years old at the time, witnessed the tragic events and tried to intervene, urging their mother to stop kicking and hitting him. Unfortunately, her pleas were ignored. According to Amarie's loved ones, he had been subjected to relentless mistreatment at the hands of his biological mother, Cynthia, over his short life. The autopsy conducted on Amarie's body revealed he had sustained severe internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. This devastating discovery shattered any hopes that Amari had fallen from a toy horse, as Synthia initially claimed.
Casals answered our questions while being taken to jail.
It was an accident. I was disciplining him and I kicked him the wrong way. It was an accident.
When detectives questioned Synthia about her son's death, she initially denied any involvement. However, as the evidence against her mounted, her claims of innocence began to crumble. The inconsistencies in her statements and the overwhelming physical evidence ultimately led the police to charge Synthia with murder in relation to Amari's death.
It was recommended Varela Casals remain jailed on $100,000 cash-only bond.
The state's concurring, and we believe $100,000 cash only.
In an attempt to evade justice, Synthia tried to claim she was incompetent to stand trial. However, the judge ruled otherwise, determining that she was mentally fit to stand trial. Cynthia's husband, Omari's stepfather, was found guilty of tampering with evidence and acting with reckless disregard for human life. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Is fit to stand trial after allegedly killing her 9-year-old son, Omari. This comes just months after her husband, Stephen Casals, was put behind bars.
Astonishingly, the judge decided to give him a reduced sentence of 14.5 years, as he has already served 9 years in prison. This reduction means that the stepfather will be released in just 5 more years. In May of 2016, Synthia pleaded guilty to 6 counts, including second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison in a stunning plea deal.
Synthia Varela Casals, CR 2014-00203.
During her sentencing, Synthia spoke of her love for Omari, breaking down in tears as she addressed the judge. Despite her crimes, she expressed her remorse and begged for forgiveness. However, her sister Sylvia, who had adopted Cynthia's surviving children, had a different story to tell.
I will never understand why all this happened, Your Honor. My sister will have to live with that, what she did to her child Amari.
Sylvia addressed the court, expressing her forgiveness towards her sister. However, she made it clear that she wanted to see Synthia face a long sentence. She shed light on the tender age of Omari at the time of his death, emphasizing that he had dreams and goals that he would never get to fulfill. Cynthia's other children, who saw the assault on Omari, asked Sylvia, "Auntie, can't Omari be fixed? Can't God or the doctor fix him?"
All right.
In a powerful and emotional letter, Cynthia's daughter wrote to the judge, expressing her desire for her mother to remain behind bars. The letter, which was read aloud during the sentencing hearing, left the courtroom in tears. Cynthia's daughter, now 7 years old, bravely expressed her deepest fears and the nightmares that still haunt her. Her words echoed the sentiments of countless victims of domestic violence, urging the judge to keep her mother away to protect her safety and well-being. Synthia Varela's shocking crime was a moment of unthinkable violence, but the next case is equally disturbing. Anamarie Jani, a woman whose brutal actions towards an innocent victim reveal a chilling disregard for life.
January, 40-year-old Anamarie Jani pled guilty to the December 2013 murder of her husband, Tony. He was stabbed to death in the couple's North Bexar County home.
On the night of December 5, 2013 at 9:30 p.m., a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy responded to a domestic violence call at the Jani residence. The deputy arrived to witness a heated altercation between 29-year-old Tony and 38-year-old Anamarie. Tony, who had expressed a desire to leave, found himself in a confrontation with his wife, who refused to let him leave the house.
Stabbed her husband, 29-year-old Tony Jani, to death. According to the police report, he was stabbed 17 times, 3 times as emergency responders arrived at the couple's Northwest Bexar County home.
According to deputy statements, Anamarie grabbed a knife and stabbed Tony multiple times in the upper body. The deputy intervened and tried to subdue Anamarie, but it was already too late. Tony succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at University Hospital.
She's since changed her mind about that plea.
I am not guilty of what they're saying that I did in cold blood.
In the aftermath of the tragic incident, Anamarie was arrested and charged with her husband's murder. Her bond was set at $250,000. 3 years later, in February 2016, District Judge Steve Hilbig sentenced Anamarie to 25 years in prison as part of a plea deal.
I am guilty of defending my life and my children's.
She claims she had ineffective counsel, that her lawyers only wanted to talk about a plea bargain.
During Anamarie's sentencing hearing, Alfred Jani, Tony's father, delivered a powerful and emotional statement to the court, addressing his daughter's killer directly. He declared, "I do not forgive you for murdering Tony, my son. I curse you for what you have done. I wish you nothing but terrible things in this life, and that when you die, you burn in hell.
We didn't talk about trial, we didn't talk about strategy, we didn't talk about anything like that.
And that her lawyer, David Christian, rushed her into agreeing to the plea bargain that called for a 25-year prison term.
Tony's mother, Jamal Jatani, also had the opportunity to address Anamarie. With tears streaming down her face, she expressed her anger and desire for justice. She stated, I pray that you rot in your prison cell.
And that called for a 25-year prison term.
Christian took exception to Jatani's testimony. He said they went over the plea agreement several times.
Under the laws, Anamarie is obligated to serve half of her sentence before becoming eligible for parole. However, despite pleading guilty, she sought a new trial 2 months after sentencing. Anamarie said she had ineffective counsel when she accepted the plea deal.
He testified that she was not rushed into signing. He said that he advised her that given the facts of the case, a plea bargain was in her best interest.
Other than being under immense amount of pressure.
In her request for a new trial, Anamarie argued that her legal counsel failed to provide adequate representation and advice. She believed that if she had been properly guided, she would have made a different decision regarding the plea deal. However, her attorneys, David Christian and Pat Hancock, insisted that they had thoroughly reviewed the case with Anamarie and concluded that taking a plea deal was in her best interests.
She was not coerced, threatened, led the wrong way.
Judge Steve Hilbig denied Jatani's motion for a new trial. Her lawyer tells me he'll appeal.
Despite the efforts of her legal team, Judge Hilbig denied Anamarie's plea for a retrial. The judge deemed the evidence presented insufficient to overturn the initial verdict. Anamarie's newest attorney spoke to the media, stating that he plans to appeal the recent ruling. This new attorney, who has joined the case amidst much speculation, believes there are valid grounds for an appeal. The horrors these killers unleashed on their own families are beyond comprehension, but the stories don't end here. In the next video on screen, we explore another shocking case that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't miss it.